Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for joining and welcome. This is the National Runaway Safeline 45 Years of Service through the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act. I'm Rachel Reynolds and I'm the Outreach and Prevention Specialist. And today we'll also hear from Sabrina Hampton, the trainer. And I just ask that at the end we'll have some time for questions and you can type them into the chatter questions box. But if you need any immediate technical help or anything like that, we'll have one of our staff members try and address anything. So first, before we begin, we're going to hear from Susan Frankel, our Chief Executive Officer.
Well, thank you, Rachel. I just want to take a minute to welcome everyone to this call and just recognize the significance of celebrating 45 years of support and services through the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act. Certainly, this is a moment to step back and to celebrate and to really take the time to acknowledge and thank all of the people and funders and folks who've invested so much time, energy, commitment, and passion to ensuring the runaway and homeless youth are safe and off the streets in this country. We feel as an organization, certainly we are fortunate as the National Runaway Safeline to have served in the capacity as the national communications system for runaway, homeless, and at-risk youth for this 45-year time period, really a little bit longer than that, but certainly benefiting from the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act. Since then, we know that we have been able, as a result, to work with and to serve and provide critical, often life-saving connections to resources and services for that 45-year time period to hundreds of thousands of young people and their families, which is not an insignificant number. But we also certainly recognize, as you will hear today, about some of the great work, the resources and services, and the great people behind the work that we are doing. We also are looking very much forward and ahead, recognizing that there still remains in this country, in any given year, 4.2 million homeless youth who need not only the National Runaway Safeline services, but the support and resources that all of you are providing as well. And as we look forward and ahead, as we adapt to the changing needs and the ever-changing and growing options for providing services and support, that is a critical priority for us as an organization. But again, just want to take this moment to recognize the significance and history behind what has gotten us to where we are today.
Great. Thank you so much, Susan. Okay, so now these are just some learning objectives. By the end of this webinar, some things we'll hope that you'll walk away with. So one is to learn the importance of the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act, also known as the RHYA. Understand the National Runaway Safeline 45 years of service, utilize the NRS's services, and learn about and join the National Runaway Prevention Month campaign. So now I'm going to give a brief overview of the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act and its impact it's had on NRS over the years. So the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act provides support to prevent and respond to youth homelessness. So these are grants that are administered by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and they are grants to these pillars of care. So one is street outreach, basic centers, transitional living, maternity group homes, runaway and homeless youth training and technical assistance, and then also a national communication system, which is operated currently by us, the National Runaway Safeline. So every 5 years, the RHYA is up for reauthorization, and this year is one of those years. And these programs serve thousands of youth each year, which Susan mentioned, so it's really critically important. And on July, there was a hearing by the U.S. House Committee on Education and Labor that featured speakers from the RHY and research community. So the process is they draft, amend, and vote on the new version of this bill. And then after that, it goes through different committees at the House of Representatives and the Senate, and then also the White House. National Network for Youth is really doing a great job working on this reauthorization and really advocating for it. And at the end of this webinar, I have linked more information on how to support RHYA, and then also learn more and get involved in your community. So then before we get into the details of the work that we do, I first kind of want to explain the magnitude of this issue and why it's important. So 1 in 30 adolescent minors, which is 13 to 17 years old, endure some form of homelessness in a year, and then 1 in 10 young adults ages 18 to 25 endure some form of homelessness in a year. And this can include running away, being kicked out, and couch surfing. So these statistics are just one of the ways to highlight why runaway prevention is really important to us here at National Runaway Safeline. So with that being said, we're in a really unique position to tackle runaway prevention, because over 50% of the youth that are contacting us are still at home and not yet on the streets. So we offer the following intervention and prevention services, which we'll go into more detail, and Sabrina will explain more about these services over the course of the webinar. But just some examples are connecting to community resources and support, problem solving through the NRS crisis intervention model, mediating through conference calls, accessing our home free program, and then also being a listening ear when youth are in need. So here at the National Runaway Safeline, we're the federally designated national communication system for runaway and homeless youth. And our mission is to keep America's runaway, homeless, and at-risk youth safe and off the streets. And each year we make approximately 100,000 connections with youth and families through our hotline, online, and offline resources. And this is a quote from Debbie Powell, who's the acting commissioner of the Family and Youth Services Bureau. And she said, "Here at FSB, we're proud to have worked with the Safeline for nearly 4 decades. We're glad that we're in when a young person types, 'should I run away?' into Google, they will find somewhere to turn." So this just kind of highlights our relationship with FSB and also the RHYA. So now we're just going to go over a timeline of NRS and some milestones that we've had over the 45 years we've been in service. So in 1974, this is when the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act was signed into law, which, like I said, provided federal funding for different programs. And in the same year, National Runaway Switchboard, which was our old name, we received funding from RHYA to establish as the national hotline. In 1995, we established our Home Free program, and this is a partnership with Greyhound to help reunite youth with their families or to save alternative living arrangements. And then in 2002, National Runaway Prevention Month started, and we'll talk about this a little bit in more detail towards the end, and it's created and recognized every November. In 2005, we started the NRS emails and forums to expand services to communicate with youth online and reach that audience. And then in 2007, we started the Let's Talk Runaway Prevention curriculum, and this was launched to help youth build life skills and educate them about resources and alternatives to running away. In 2011, we started live chat services, which created for youth and families in crisis. In 2013, we changed our name from the Switchboard to the Safeline. In 2018, we released our trend report, and this can be found on our website, and it's released over the past 10 years of crisis connections and trends that we've had. And then in 2019, this year, we have established a youth advisory board, and this was really to incorporate youth leadership and have a youth voice into the work that we do each day. So now I'm going to turn over to Sabrina, our trainer, and she's going to go into some more details about NRS's services.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sabrina Hampton, and I'm going to talk to you briefly about some of the wonderful services that we provide here at the National Runaway Safeline. So we're 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and we operate on multiple platforms. And we'll talk a little bit about those platforms later in the presentation. So what makes our work unique is the fact that we utilize harm reduction and trauma-informed care work into our framework as a way to respond to individuals who are in crisis. We also are confidential. We're crisis-oriented, which means that we work on the individual's immediate needs. We're non-sectarian, non-directive, so we don't tell our people that reach out to us what to do or what we think is best. We're non-judgmental, and we offer empowering support. And we're able to do all of this with a pool of amazing volunteers that have completed a 40-hour training before going on to the phones or in our other platforms to support those who reach out to us. And a big part of what we do is following this crisis intervention model. It's a 5-step solution-focused, trauma-informed model that is used correctly, is able to work with an individual who's in crisis to help find some sort of solution. First step is establishing rapport. So that looks like checking on safety, making sure that that person who's reaching out to us, basic needs are met, and what we can do to ensure that they do get the resources and support that they need. Exploring facts and feelings. So this is where we're going to talk about what's happening in their current crisis, who's involved, what does that look like, just giving them a space to vent about what's been going on, and being a listening ear for that individual. And then we'll move into the focus. So focus on main issues is now that we talked about everything and they've been able to vent and get these feelings out, what could we help them with? How can we best help them? And from there, we'll talk about options. So we'll see what they've tried before, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what they're interested in trying out, and helping them find the appropriate resources in order to get their needs met. And then the last piece is plan of action and closure. And that means that we've now established a plan with them, and they've come up with something that they can do. We also will talk about a plan B, just in case the first thing doesn't work out. And when we close out with this individual, we let them know that we're, again, 24/7, we're confidential, and they're always able to reach out with us if, the first 2 plans don't work out, or if they just have additional issues that they would like to address. So we use this model with each one of our outreaches, and that can be via the phone, through email, and even through our chat services. So I talked about resources when we talked about eliciting options. So we are lucky enough to have a database that has over 6,500 options available for folks. We can assist a youth in reaching out to agencies or services, and we can also advocate for those young people or individuals who reach out to us in order to seek more information about a certain resource or help them navigate how to talk to someone. Reaching out to a program can be a little nerve-wracking for some young people, so the fact that we're able to conference call and help that youth can benefit them largely. So some of the resources that we have is child protection, counseling, shelters. We have medical assistance programs, treatment if someone is looking for that. We also have additional hotlines that we can reach out to on behalf of the youth, or provide them with information in order for them to reach out to those organizations on their own. And again, this is a way to help individuals be able to reach out, get their needs met, and learn how to navigate services on their own. An additional service that we provide here is message service. This is an opportunity for a youth and a parent or legal guardian to begin communicating with each other in a nonverbal way. So we're able to help them come up with a message that they would like to have sent out to the youth, or have the youth call in and collect. It's confidential, and we do this with the hopes that they will begin to move toward a conference call in the next steps. So again, message service is a way for them to begin the process and eventually move toward conference calls. And conference calls are done with an NRS advocate or volunteer who mediates and helps the youth and their parental legal guardian have a conversation about an issue that's currently going on. So anything from running away to maybe not doing great in school, we will be able to assist the youth to seek support from us and mediate the conversation between the youth and the family. So this is a youth-initiated process, unlike message service, which is a both parent and youth-initiated process. Conference calls can only be initiated by the young person. And with that, our role is to mediate, make sure that both sides are being heard, hopefully, help them craft a plan that will be beneficial to the both of them, and really hear each other and support each other through that process. And again, as always, our services are confidential. And then our Home Free program. So Home Free is in collaboration with Greyhound. We've had the Home Free program here at NRS since 1995, and it is an opportunity to do reunification with a youth with a parental legal guardian. So if a young person qualifies for a free bus ticket, we will be able to return them home or to another safe living arrangement. It works with young people from 12 to 21 years of age, and it's a great opportunity for us to make connections with youth and their families to talk about issues that are going on, connecting them with resources, and hopefully having some opportunity to do some long-term positive outcomes. And some additional services that we have is our live chat. So we are, if you go to our webpage, www.1800runaway.org, you'll be able to connect to us through our website to our live chat. Live chat is using all of the stuff that we talked about in a written format. Our volunteers and staff are here to assist young folks, parents, or anyone who reaches out to us through that format in the same way we would if we were on the phone. And we also have emails. So emails are a shorter format where we'll utilize the same model, crisis intervention model, through this method where we're able to reach out and answer questions, provide resources in that email format. And then forums, this is a front-facing space that you can ask a question, and we are able to provide support, and also other community folks are able to respond, and we monitor and make sure that those responses upheld NRS's protocol. And then, as I mentioned, we are able to do all of this work through the wonderful volunteers that we have here. We currently have 100 crisis services volunteers that help us with all of the work that we do here. So emails, bulletins, forums, and phone calls are done with volunteers and some paid staff. Our volunteers are put through a 40-hour training. They also are required to supervise phone calls while they practice their skills. They are also encouraged to ask lots of questions, and they do role plays and things to make sure that they are able to utilize the 40-hour intervention model, crisis intervention model, as well as provide support and look up resources for the folks who are reaching out to us. We have crisis services supervisors who are there to monitor, provide guidance and assistance to the volunteers as needed. And then our wonderful education and prevention program. This program provides information and reports to folks who are interested in NRS. We have educational blogs and other things that you can find are located on our website. These blogs talk about everything from current trends in working with homeless and runaway youth to things around trafficking. You can, again, look for those on our website. We also have educational materials for parent and youth. There should be a form that you can download for anything from brochures to tearaway posters, stress bookmarks. They're all found on our website, and we're able to send those out to folks who are interested in passing that information around. We have our Let's Talk Runaway Prevention Curriculum, and this is a 14-module curriculum that is used through different programs. So organizations, after-school programs, community programs are able to take this and talk about everything from peer pressure to family dynamics, and using these with young folks as a teaching tool and conversation starters on topics that are really, really relevant to young people today. And then, as Rachel mentioned, National Runaway Prevention Month Awareness Campaign. She'll talk to you more about that in the next couple of slides.
Great, thanks, Sabrina. So in a few minutes, too, we'll also hear from some volunteers and staff members about some of the impactful calls that they've had over the years. But before we get to that, I just want to talk about National Runaway Prevention Month, which is happening in just a couple months. National Runaway Prevention Month, or NRPM, is an annual awareness and prevention campaign which is focused on runaway and homeless youth issues. And like I said, this happens every November, and this is where participants across the country can host different activities and events that really highlight the experiences of runaway and homeless youth and how individuals and organizations can play a role in ending youth homelessness. And NRPM highlights available resources and assists communities in creating a stronger safety net for at-risk and homeless youth. And the goals of the campaign are twofold. So the first is to raise awareness of the runaway and homeless youth crisis and the issues that these young people face. And the second is to educate the public about solutions and the role they can play in prevention and ending youth homelessness. The little light bulb to the left is our logo each year, because the theme is Shine a Light, meaning that NRPM is shining a light on the issues runaway and homeless youth face. It's shining a light on the important resources available for youth in crisis. It's bringing together communities to provide a safety net and to provide safe and caring environments for youth. And then lastly, NRPM, with the support of community organizations, can show America's runaway and homeless youth that they are not alone. So each year we have different national events and different ways to participate in NRPM. It can be as simple as just going on Facebook and sharing information, or also throwing in your own event in your community. So we kick off NRPM on November 1st with Facebook Profile Picture Day, and this is where you can add a Shine a Light filter to your Facebook profile, so you can show and support runaway and homeless youth for the entire month of November. And there are detailed instructions how to do this on a toolkit that you can download online. After this webinar, I will send an email out to everyone on how to access this toolkit and more information about NRPM. And then the week of November 4th through the 8th is Education Week. And during this, we'll be sharing information about runaway and homeless youth issues, for example, like providing current statistics, exploring what RHY means and what it can look like for different people, and discuss the challenges of navigating the different systems. And we'll be doing this online through Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so you can get connected ahead of time with us to join the conversation. And then during this week also is Twitter Chat, which happens on November 5th. And you can join us and different partners to discuss runaway and homeless youth issues and how everyone can play a role in ending youth homelessness. This is where just different organizations can come together, answer a set of questions, and really get a discussion going. On Tuesday, November 12th is Wear Green Day, and this is just a really fun way to get you, your community, maybe your coworkers involved with NRPM and raising awareness. So you just wear green on that day. And then you can post online using the hashtag NRPM 2019. And then finally, Light the Night community events is on Tuesday, November 19th. And this is where youth service agencies, community groups, and individuals across the country host different events to shine a light on the issues and show solidarity with youth in crisis. So some examples for things we've seen in the past are people have used flashlights, candles, and other forms of light, or they host events such as a resource fair or a sleep out in their community. So if you're interested in joining National Runaway Prevention Month, being a partner, or just getting more info, you can go to our website, and I will send out that link also. Also, feel free to reach out to me at the end, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. So now, at this part, we're going to hear some stories about some impactful calls and chats people have taken over the years. We're first going to hear from Andre Matlock. He's a Chicago native and began volunteering at the National Runaway Safeline in 1981. And throughout the years, Andre has had many different roles. He's currently a volunteer, but he's also been a staff member and then a member of the board in the past. He works in the social service field, and in his free time, he likes to bike and read. So I'll turn the floor over to you, Andre.
Thank you, ma'am. As you mentioned, I've been here for a heck of a long time, and that's a testament to the quality of the services that we have here and the feeling of solidarity. When I first came, I was very much, how do you say, rah-rah for youth. I mean, as far as I was concerned, anytime that someone left the comfort of their home, they left a place where they were safe, where they had food, had shelter, there must have been something wrong at home. So I was very blaming when it came to parents and all that. Then I took a sabbatical and we adopted and at the age of 6, bless his heart, decided that in the middle of the night he was going to open up the doors and go out into the world. Not anything that we had done, but only because it was something different. I came back here with more of a feeling of wanting to see everything. From the points of the youth, points of the parents, brothers and sisters, and it made me a better liner, better person on the phones. So I received a call just a few weeks ago from someone who had been a resident of Massachusetts. She recently moved to California. She was about to turn 18, and her parents had actually given her permission to move to California to be with her boyfriend, whom she had met online, and who would come to stay with them for 3 weeks, and she had gone to stay with him for the corresponding 3 weeks. She was calling because she was very upset because she said her mother was pushing, but she was only 5 days away from being 18. Her mother was pushing to reestablish control over her life, and she didn't understand it, and she wanted to know what she could do about it. Her mother was demanding that she move back home, had sent her a plane ticket, was calling repeatedly to his parents because she was staying with his family, berating them, telling them that you're going to give me back my daughter. She wanted to know what she could do. She had no intention of going back home. She knew that even though she would only have to be there for another 5 days when she got back, that she didn't have the money to immediately come back to California. The reason I mentioned the things I said earlier is that, on the surface, it just seems like perhaps someone just wanted to reestablish control or whatever. But I recognize the fact that the parents had given permission for her to move there, and that there must have been something else going on. Through the conversation, which took some time, she finally mentioned the fact that just 2 weeks prior to her moving to California, her boyfriend had cut off the relationship. He wouldn't talk to her on the phone. He wouldn't respond to emails. He wouldn't do anything of the nature. Her response was to get briefly involved in a physical relationship with another person just prior to moving. When she got there, she immediately told her boyfriend what had happened. After that, he began to basically berate her on this on a daily basis. Her friends, his friends, she had done in California, were of the same ilk. She called her mom after 2 weeks of not communicating with her because basically he had confiscated her phone because he said you're not trustworthy. She conveyed to her mom everything that was going on. And her mom's response was, I feel you're being abused. I want to help you come back home. And she went about trying to make sure that it happened. We talked for a long time about her relationship with her mom prior, her family, and the people she had left behind, and the fact that she had actually, expressed to her mom, feelings of, I feel alone here, I have no friends, people just, always on his side. We talked about a lot of different options she might have. One of the things that we brought up was the idea of maybe coming back home with that plane ticket, getting a job, saving up some money, and then returning to California when things, were right. We also talked about the fact that maybe it might show a bit of commitment on his part if he was willing to pitch in half the money for that ticket. At the end of our call, this is the option that you chose. And as far as I know, this is what you followed through with. It was really impactful to me because there was just so many different layers to the call, and there's no right or wrong, good and bad, black and white. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. So now, next we're going to hear from Jalen Draves, our volunteer coordinator at National Runaway Safeline. He was previously the crisis services supervisor and assistant to the volunteer department. Jalen has a lot of experience working with youth. He's a former urban agricultural coordinator for the Community Youth Development Institute, and for 3 years was a site manager at Right Up School, which provides educational activities for elementary students. So I'll give you the floor now, Jamin. Thanks.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to focus a little bit on something different because I know one of the popular things is that, we are a crisis hotline. But as Sabrina mentioned earlier, we focus a lot on digital services as well, and I kind of wanted to share a story that had to do with youth utilizing our chat. So I, as Rachel mentioned, used to be a supervisor in our crisis center. We typically have 2 to 3 crisis service supervisors on duty at any time to assist our volunteers. And when we're not assisting volunteers, we are taking calls and we are taking chats as well. So again, our volunteers are extremely important to us in our services, and we wouldn't be able to take half the contacts that we do without their help. But that said, on this particular day, I was taking a chat, and I noticed that this chat was from somebody that was quite young. This boy was 12 years old, and that is something that doesn't always happen. We have a lot of younger people utilize our services, but typically it's within the 16 to 20 range. So taking a chat from a 12-year-old was a bit unusual, but it's not unheard of. Now, this youth was pretty focused on running away. And he lived in a pretty large city. So that was, to me, kind of, we've talked about, well, what would that look like if you ran away? Do you think that you'd be able to remain unnoticed? Like you are going to stick out. You are going to stick out at somebody on the street. And so we talked about that a little bit, but really, when youth come to you and they say, I want to run away, there's an underlying issue that we really want to get at. So through the course of our talk, we learned that his parents are quite physically abusive. And he also has a little sister who is also receiving this abuse. And it turned out that he was very interested in reporting this abuse, but he didn't really know how to do that. So typically when this happens on a chat, we'll invite somebody to call us directly, because it's much easier to conference call with an abuse reporting hotline. So then the youth is empowered to take this, to answer the questions themselves, and they'll have us on there for support. Now, this was a situation where the youth was talking to me, but his father was in the room with him. He was using the family computer in the corner of the room, and his father was watching TV. So he was not able to talk to me at that time, and him being 12 years old did not have a lot of access to phone on his own. This was the summer, so there was no school. Now, he and I talked about the details of abuse reporting. We went into, we can't promise you what happens and things like that, but he was very adamant that this needed to happen. So I offered to call, but I told him I need him to stay on the line. So when the person on the abuse hotline asks me questions, then I can ask him, and he can provide me with his response. So that's just what we did. It took a little bit longer than usual, but we were there. They would ask me a question about what was happening at home, and he would provide me with an answer. And we kind of relayed back and forth like that until we were done. And then I just let him know that, they said that they will follow up with you if there's something they can go on. And that's about where we ended the call. Now, we typically the chat. So we don't typically have follow-up with our callers or chatters, but in this particular case, the agency which I filed with in the state that I filed it, we did get a positive outcome from this, and that is just something that normally doesn't happen. We don't get a lot of follow-up with our chatters, but in this case, there was a positive intervention with the family. So, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Jamin. So, last but not least, we're going to hear from Julie Randall. She's volunteered with National Runaway Safeline as a liner for about 4 years. And prior to her time at NRS, Julie was a stay-at-home mom of 3 sons who are now grown, living on either coast. She currently works in a retail boutique and likes spending her free time volunteering with various community organizations. And she also enjoys traveling and cooking with her husband, who's also an NRS liner and board member.
So today I wanted to talk about a call I took a few months ago. I received a call from a young woman who said she was of Yemeni descent and she wanted to run away. As is fairly typical, I asked how old she was, and she told me she was 19. And she also told me at the state in which she lived, the age of majority, which is pretty typical, was 18. And I explained to her that we would probably be talking about her moving out as opposed to running away. And her main concern was how her family would handle this and how they would perceive it. And that question really persisted, and that seemed to be the main reason for her call. She was currently homeschooled, and at 19, she figured she was about a junior in high school. Her parents had discontinued her education in about 7th grade, but she had begged them to start again. She had very specific goals. She wanted to attend college and wanted to become a dental hygienist, and they did not take her ambitions seriously. She also had an older sister, who was in an arranged marriage, had a child, and was currently back at home with her parents because this marriage was not going well. The caller definitely had the same concerns, that was the plan for her future. She was bringing up issues that I didn't feel qualified to address. So what I wanted to find for her was some resource that could lend a cultural perspective. So I dug into our database, and I found an organization called the Arab American Family Services Agency. So together we reached out, spent nearly an hour on the phone with an AAFS representative who was incredibly helpful. She helped the caller weigh the cost of, well, first of all, she listened to the caller's situation and had real empathy because it was something that she could relate to. She also helped the caller weigh the cost of her decision to leave because there was a concern, and they both discussed this openly, of retaliatory or like punitive measures that might be taken if she were to leave and then go home again. She also, the representative from AAFS, gave the caller her personal office number and said that she could contact her with any other concerns in the future, or if she just wanted to have somebody to talk to. She was very direct with her, but she was very understanding, and she definitely gave an insight that, as I said before, I would not have been able to share. She also noted, and this is a point given to that she meant for me, that due to the caller's sheltered lifestyle, being on the streets or moving out without a plan and a safe place to be was very dangerous, was particularly dangerous for her because she hadn't had exposure to the outside world, and so she really didn't know a good person from a bad. That made me realize the importance of helping the caller find a transitional living program if she were to decide to leave, or some sort of alternative living arrangement. We did a little brainstorming. We talked about whether or not she had family in the area. She did not. We discussed the possibility of going to her mosque community to see if there was someone who could help her out. Unfortunately, she wasn't allowed to attend mosque, so we turned to the prospect of a TLP, what we call a TLP, but it's a transitional living program. Fortunately, I was able to find a couple in her area. I offered to reach out, and she wasn't quite at that point, but she did take the phone numbers and the website, so she had that information at her disposal when she did make the decision, or if she did make the decision to reach out. So she wanted to talk a little bit more about this prospect of an arranged marriage, which seemed to be a real concern for her. I had another contact that actually it was in our database, but it had come from a previous call I'd had a couple of years ago, and it was an agency specifically designed for young women in her situation. It was called Unchained at Last. Took that information as well, and throughout the call, really tried to boost her confidence, and I told her truthfully how brave she was and how articulate and mature she seemed, especially considering the fact that she had had very little contact with anybody outside of her immediate family. In the end, we agreed that there was no easy solution, that what she decided was, at the end of the day, she wanted to keep thinking about her situation, really consider her dreams, and weigh her options. I assured her that she could call us. We're available, as Sabrina said, 24/7, and there would always be somebody at NRS to pick up the call if she wanted to talk further. She also knew she had her contact information from AAFS, as well as the Transitional Living Program and the other agency, Unchained at Last agency. That's if she were to find herself facing an unwanted arranged marriage. Really, our calls don't always resolve neatly, but after about 2 hours, I think my caller felt like she had some resources at her disposal and that her voice had been heard. And I think on that given day, that was exactly what she needed. So.
Thank you, Julie, for sharing, and thank you, Andre and Jamin, as well. So just one last thing before we turn to questions. Some ways to support runaway and homeless youth is getting involved in supporting National Runaway Prevention Month. advocating for the RHYA by contacting legislators. And these, the green is links that you can click. We'll send these out at the end as well. Then also connecting with coalitions and stakeholder groups in your community. So now we're just gonna take this time. If anyone has any questions, we can unmute everyone, or feel free to type it in the questions box or chat. And also just one thing to keep in mind too is that this is being recorded, so the questions are recorded as well. You can raise your hand if you have a question, and I'll unmute you. And we'll stick around for a little, so we'll be around for some questions. If not, thank you so much for joining us. Please feel free to email us if you do have questions about any of our programs, about NRPM or anything like that. And if you need a certificate for any reason, you can email rreynolds at 1-800-runaway.org, and I can send you one. Other than that, thanks, Sabrina. Thank you to everyone sharing your story. It was very insightful hearing from everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Ooh, it looks like we do have one question.
We're working on unmuting you. Sorry.
So there was a question, do volunteers get training on mediating conversations between youth and their guardians? Sabrina, I'll let you take this one.
Yes, so we do have a section, as I mentioned in conference calls, it's a mediation process. And so our volunteers and staff receive training on conflict resolution. That's a big part of what we do here. That's another one. That's the same. Is that the same cue?
Yeah. Daryl, it looks like you had a question, but it says you're self-muted, so you can unmute yourself or type it into the box.
Okay. I'm just looking here. Not look there.
Hi, Daryl. Did you have a question?
Hey, you want a question?
Oh, I just wanted to, this is Cindy Williams with Loving Arms. I kind of logged in with Daryl Cribb, and I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't an issue for the both of us getting a certificate of attendance.
No, you can both email me with your names, and then I can do it separately.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so if there's no more questions, we're gonna end this. Like I said, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and thank you so much for attending today.